Let's start
Just
over.
start again.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into Cage Cash, episode 2, officially. You may see we had a recent upload gone wrong, but we're coming back strong for UFC Vegas 68. I'm here with my brother Ryan. How are you?
Good, John. How you doing? Excited to be here.
Not bad, not bad. I've been getting ready for this fight. It was tough last weekend. No fights on the docket, but I need something better than Slap League to get me through
Oh
my
my,
weekends.
yeah, the slap league, man. They're really working it hard over there. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting card. We had last week off, and now we're gonna come back with UFC 68, Lewis versus Spivak here. It's gonna be a good one. A lot of names we don't know. I'm sure John doesn't know as we'll go through this card. A lot of
The
newcomers.
casual on the panel. Yep, that's true.
Well, I mean, like, so all these guys are from like road to the UFC. So the road to the UFC finals is actually happening during this event. So it's like the Asian like contender series almost, and they do it as like a tournament. So like they actually did, there was kind of like all these guys have won two fights now to kind of get to these final events. So we'll talk through those, some interesting prospects that I think are really going to have some good UFC careers, and a couple that have a lot of hype behind them, who we'll go through. But with that, let's keep it short, let's keep it sweet, and let's just find some good spots to maybe look at from a betting perspective as well. At the end of the card, we'll kind of go through our very best bets for every single fight. Give you guys a little nifty cheat sheet you can take into the fight. So as you go through it, and you start cashing those tickets, you can keep adding looks and keep looking for things to find some money on. So, John, why don't we get started?
Yeah, it sounds like a plan. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we're getting some late fights this weekend, probably with the Vegas.
Yeah, so they'll kick off at like 11 or something because it was supposed to be in South Korea. You'll see a lot of these guys
Okay,
on the card, right? A lot of the
the
Asian
lines are
fighters,
more open.
and Asian prospects here. So it's supposed to be in South Korea, but they moved it back to Vegas after Koreans. It was supposed to be a Korean zombie card, I
Got it.
believe,
Got it.
originally, and it got moved. So, um,
Perfect. All
but
right.
yeah, let's
Well,
get started
let's
here.
kick off with the prelims. They'll be coming in at 10 p.m. Eastern time. The first fight we got is a flyweight bout between and all night. This is going to be rough on some of these names, but I'll give it my all. We got Tatsuro Taira versus Jesus Aguilar.
Yeah, this should be a good fight. And Tyra is, it should be a good fight because I really just want to watch Tyra. He's a big prospect, 12-0 coming in out of Japan. You go back, he's a fun fighter to watch tape of. He has got, really great grappling, and kind of unorthodox in some ways. He gets in on your body. These guys fighting at the lower weight classes, he'll really get on your body and use trips. He's just a lot stronger than people, especially up in the upper body. So, is able to just kind of get in and throw, do some outside trips, take people to the fence and really work on them. And his striking has looked better. He's been 2-0 in the UFC so far. We saw him come in the debut against Candelario. Kind of had one tough round there at the beginning, but then looked really good. And then, against TJ Vergara last time out, really just dominant until he found that armbar finish. So Tyra is kind of all you can expect in a prospect. Just turned 23, so my age, which is pretty fucking crazy. Younger than me, and he'll be out there tonight, or this weekend, looking to get the finish against Jesus Aguilar, who is a pretty decent fighter from what we saw on tape. He's well rounded. I think the biggest thing he's gonna really struggle with here is just the height disadvantage and the reach disadvantage versus Tyra. We saw Tyra striking looked a lot better in his last fight. I think he's just going to be able to hold Aguilar at range. Aguilar is kind of I think, 8-1. I think he's got 6 submissions, 5 by guillotine or something, right? So he's kind of a submission or bust style of fighter. I think Tyra, unless he leaves the neck out, is going to be able to get the job done and find a finish here. John, we can take a look at the odds here. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Tyra opened a -800 favorite. I think he's -1100 or something right now. So not a ton of value, but you can look inside the distance. You're still getting kind of like -165 stuff like that. So I don't really like any of those spots. If anything, Tyra by knockout is kind of a good look. We can take a look at that over here on best fight odds here. And let's look at Tyra by KO. See, interestingly, you can get Tyra by KO at 600. And I saw some early lines. I saw some people on MMA Twitter get it up like 700,
That's
800.
crazy.
I think that's interesting. Just with a -1100 favorite. Yeah, he's a grappler first, but he does have improved striking and really good ground and pound. So I think if you're gonna look for a spot on this fight, unless you're going on the Aguilar side, but I mean, look, guys, it's still getting pounded. He's probably just getting put in parlays at this point, which don't do it. Those odds, it's not worth it. But interesting stuff. And I think Tyra by KO could be an interesting look.
Well, yeah, and I mean, just looking at those odds, you can see it looked like Tyra's or the fight in general was -200 to end inside the distance. So,
Right. That's the thing, right? So if Tyra's not finding, and that's, even some of these guys who are straight specialists in submissions and things like this, right? Like if if he can get the back and he's just able to start raining down punches in a tough position up against the cage, right? Like
yeah,
like they're not going to discriminate between the choke and getting the finish. And especially for one of these young prospects, I think, one of those highlight kind of knockouts and just working them on the ground
hmm
could be something Tyra tries to do against definitely a lower level fighter and somebody who he should beat. So, I think he'll probably try and fight on the feet for the first round. I would honestly expect maybe test himself a little bit more, but he's got so much in the back pocket to lean back to. Whether it be wrapping up a sub or by KO, which is a really interesting look. So
yep. You never want to fade a Dana prospect when a early prelim. It feels like these guys they get some nice matchups and they
yeah, this will be good if you're just a casual fan, and this is your only fight you're going to watch before you go to bed. This is a good one to tune into. I feel like that's probably why they did this fight
yeah.
first, because otherwise I feel like he should be fighting on the main card at this point. But
Okay. All right, let's move on to the second fight of the night. It's a middleweight bout between John Young Park and Dennis Talulian. I'm gonna go with that.
Tialulin, I think, yeah. So this is a good fight, John. I'm really a big fan. We've got Jungyoung Park versus Dennis Tialulin here. Park coming in out of South Korea and Tialulin out of Russia. We've seen Park against some pretty high level competition in the UFC. Had a win over John Phillips. Tayfun Nchukwi beat him when he was still undefeated. He's had a bit of a comeback here lately. Saw him lose to Gregory Rodriguez, which doesn't age very well after we just saw him get knocked out a couple weeks ago. But still, I think a good fighter in most people's minds in RoboCop there. Beat Eric Anders in a fight that I think he definitely won, and then got Holmes with the choke last time out. So that's the Park side we're looking at. He's really well rounded everywhere. He's got great cardio, which is something I really trust in this matchup. And I think he really has a path if he can avoid Tallulah early and then look to work the takedowns and just control. I think he's better once this fight gets going. The only worry I have is these guys both hit hard. They're both power punchers. Fighting up at 185. There's definitely Tuluan's definitely alive for a finish here early. But I think, if Park can just work in, we've seen Tallulah gas later in fights. He looks like a bit of a different fighter when you go back and watch some of his time in Brave and kind of the regional fights. He was really good. And fought with a lot more of a kickboxing style, but now he's just kind of like spamming punches if he's on the feet, and if he gets taken down, he really just gets controlled, and that's what I worry about most in this matchup. If I'm on the Tululan side, is we've seen Park really. What I liked most in the tape, and we'll see. I do have a bet on Park here. I really like that he seemed to try and fight to the weaknesses of the opponent in some of his past fights, right? Like I think we see too often people are just willing to stand and bang or do the Sean Strickland and try and kickbox with Alex Pereira, right? And it's like the path of least resistance in a sport like this where it's so high variance. It makes you feel good as a better, I think, right? So I'll probably eat my words here, but I really like Jun Young Park to get the decision win here. I think he could find a late finish as well, but that's kind of the way I'm leaning. Any thoughts on this one, John? You want to take a look at the odds quickly?
Yeah, I mean, my initial takeaway as a guy who can be swayed by a good promotional video or a good nickname. I saw Iron Turtle up there,
Mm-hmm.
and for Park, and that's hard to fade. I mean, you go in there with a nickname like that. Uh, I'm gonna have to ride the favorite with you.
Right, right. Yeah, so I did take a play on Park, I think around minus 195. You can check out all my plays always for free on at Ryan's MMA picks on Twitter. We'll always post my plays leading up to the fights. And they'll always be up there for you guys to take a look at, comment, let me know what you think. So yeah,
Jump
we
on to
have
the next
Park
one.
here. Yeah, let's do it.
Or you got
Let's do it.
something? All
No,
right.
no, no, let's do it. Let's keep moving.
All right. So the next fight, women's flyweight, we got another South Korean
Oh
Ji
yeah, we
Yeon
can be
Kim
quick with this one.
versus Mandy Bohm from Germany.
Mandy Bum. It's pronounced bum,
Okay.
and that aptly describes the fighter we're seeing out here today. I mean, holy fuck, guys, we've got 0-4, or 1-5, or 1-4 in our last five, right? Versus Mandy Bum, who's 0-2 in
And
the
and
UFC.
they're 1-4 in their last five as a minus 285 favorite or
Yeah,
minus
I mean,
260 on there.
she's losing. She's okay. Let's just. I'm passing on this fight altogether. I would
All
not.
right.
I would
We're moving
go.
on. We're moving on. I'm calling
I
it.
might just move on. I've got Kim by decision. If
That's
you're
all we
if you're
need. That's
fucking
all we
if you're a
need.
fucking degenerate, round three KO Kim. Like a dollar. All right, let's keep moving.
All right. Next fight in the prelims, we have two South Koreans here. We got in his flyweight bout, we got Sung Guk Choi and Hyun Sung Park. I think I did pretty decent on the second one. Not so sure about the first, but Ryan, tell me about it.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting fight. So this is the first of the road to the UFC finals, and as John said, what do we say here? Featherweight, um,
Flyweight,
division,
flyweight.
flyweight division, I should say. So yeah, we're gonna get a really good fight here. Two South Korean prospects who are coming in, both right around that 5'6", 5'7", similar reaches. Sung Juk Choi is coming in out of Korean Zombie MMA, coached by Korean Zombie himself. You saw him in the corner on some of the regional fight tape and stuff. And then we've got Hyun Park, who has really had a really nice you just watch the road to the UFC stuff, you got to be really high on this guy. I mean, two really quick finishes that he was able to get on the road to the UFC, and has looked pretty dominant in all of his other fights as well. The only thing here, and it's interesting, we can talk more about this on another time, maybe on one of our Monday shows. A lot of these South Korean fighters and Asian fighters didn't fight much during COVID, and specifically these South Korean guys, a lot of them had kind of these young guys have to do their military service right around this time
Mm-hmm.
as well. So it's interesting. They kind of either have to like take 2 years off, or they're only allowed to fight in Korea and stuff. So you don't hear about these guys until a little bit later, and obviously sometimes just don't get the promotion and stuff like that. So, but I really like this fight. We start to take a look at it. They're both very well rounded. I think Hyun Park definitely has the finishing upside in this fight. He's won most of his fights by finish. Is really strong on the feet. Will be light on the feet, and then uses the wrestling well to just kind of get to grappling and work into his chokes. Whereas Sunguk Choi is more of a wrestler straight up. He's pretty stiff on the feet. But I think he does a good job of getting the fight to where he needs to, and he's able to kind of control it. To me, it's a pretty even fight. I'm not going to pretend I know a bunch about these guys. You can go out, kind of watch 3 or 4 fights on each of them, and they're dominating lower level competition, right? 6-1 versus 7-0 here. Choi's loss. Let's see, who did he lose to again? Oh, right, Steve Ursig. I went back and watched that fight, and he definitely lost that fight. This guy Ursig is an interesting prospect actually as well. I saw him. As I was doing research for this fight. That
Deep,
reminds me.
deep within the YouTube.
Um,
Yep.
but anyway, so I think this is going to be a good one, and I just think let's take a look at the odds here, John. So the big thing for me, and you'll see the odds starting to close on Choi a little bit. He opened about a 155 favorite, so closing back around where it was. I like Choi in this fight just because I think the line's a little wide. I think there's a good chance that his wrestling wins out, and if it does, I think he looks like the favorite in this fight if his wrestling is better. I think if he can get to this fight to the ground and kind of control it in the spots where he wants to, he's obviously going to look like the favorite. Now, again, I think there's the live upside for a finish on the park side. But yeah, I like Choi, and I had a unit on him at like plus 175 earlier in the week, and then I really also like a by decision look. You're not getting amazing odds, but let's see. Choi by decision, you're getting plus 320 on FanDuel, so that's not a bad look either. And it's to me, there's a lot of binary fights this weekend where it's like I like kind of the grappler and the minute winner to be able to control and kind of take it where they want it and get it to a decision, or we're gonna see I think a finish heavy card in that a lot of these favorites are going in and doing exactly what they're supposed to do and getting knockouts. So I'm going to be on the underdog here in Choi, but I'm excited to see this fight for sure.
Yeah, I might be riding with you. It seems like pretty close fight, and you're getting some good odds with Choi. But I will not pretend to know anything more about them because I did not go back on the YouTube rabbit hole. So I'm basing it off you. So we're gonna all Cage Cash listeners are gonna hopefully
Yeah, this is
be riding with you for their research this week.
right,
But all
right.
right, so we got three more prelim fights. We're gonna go next to a bantamweight fight between Toshiomi Kazama from Japan and Rinya Nakamura from Japan. So continuing the
Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of these countrymen lined up together in the finals. We've got another one of the road to the UFC finals here. And this is another interesting fight. Nakamura is coming in as the second biggest favorite on the card, I believe it, as a minus 400 favorite, versus Kazama, who's not a bad fighter at all. You see all the medals around his neck there. Big Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, competes in a lot of tournaments, black belt, I believe. And, just is a really good finisher and really slick in his own right. The hype on Nakamura is as a wrestler. He competed for the national team in Japan, from what I understand. Almost went to the Olympics, I guess, and then transitioned into MMA. Just a very dominant wrestler, and I mean, it's crazy to me that he weighs 136 pounds. You see that sometimes with wrestlers, right? But this guy is just like fucking ripped, like just built like a brick shit house, and like gets on you, and he doesn't get off. He finds finishes very quickly. He's fought a decent level of competition over in Japan. Oh, accidentally clicked, but there you go. You see his wrestling photo there. Um, but it's done exactly what you want to do, winning all these fights in basically the first round, except that a really nice left high kick that he beat somebody with. But in these last couple fights, fighting some pretty decent level of competition. Got 23-6, 8-3, 9-2, right? So and looked really good in those road to the UFC fights. Got that key lock, which is like this weird cool submission that a lot of these Asian fighters do that I've never really seen much before. And then was able to take down and win with punches last time. And the other thing about him is, he's not bad on the feet. Like you think about a lot of the, like who's that guy? Like Marco Madsen, like the wrestler, like they're not strikers. They're not scary on the feet, and you're not really worried about them. This guy has power everywhere. And I think he's got a decided advantage on the feet as well in this fight. So I definitely get where the odds are. Kazama's going to come in and try and get this fight to the ground on his terms and look for a finish. He wants to be on top and look for a submission. My big thing is I didn't see much of Kazama being able to, and it's maybe just because he's been dominant in most of his fights, right? But I didn't see him having a lot of defensive grappling and submission ability, right? You didn't see him throwing up a lot from on bottom. And again, he wasn't in a ton of those positions, but I think that's where he's going to find himself against Nakamura a lot of the time. And unless he's able to wrap something up from there, I just don't like his chances. So I like Nakamura in this pretty heavily. I took him inside the distance. I took some unders. The under in this fight is really a good look, I think, generally. But we can take a
Yeah, I
look at the
mean,
odds.
I'm looking at the odds quick. I see Nakamura by submission is sitting at above plus 500 still. So it
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And as we saw, right, like he did get that one just 2 fights ago, got the submission. And has gotten one more on his record before that as well, I believe. So that's an interesting spot. I honestly think he finds the KO. I think he's just
okay.
going to be hyped up and looking for it. So the best we're finding there is plus 110 on Bet Online. So not a ton of value there, but could be an interesting parlay piece. Like fight doesn't go at minus 250. It's not great, but under 2.5, like something like that could be an interesting
Yeah.
spot. But really just to sit back and watch Nakamura and see what he's all about in a pretty big spot for him. So I'm excited for this one.
Yeah. The only other thing that I'll add on, I mean, just looking at it, the 2 fights Nakamura has been in the road to the UFC, sitting at 100% takedown defense. So I think that'll be interesting. With you saying Kazama definitely likes to get to the ground, so I think it'll just be interesting to see how that levels up if Nakamura is kind of willing to just go straight down, fight with him down there if he wants to keep him up at all. But let's move on. I've been liking this fight simply from some of the hairstyles we're seeing, but we got a featherweight bout between Zhang Young Lee and Yi Jia. The UFC photo for Yi Jia is pretty sweet. It's not quite as cool on that website that you're looking at, but
No, not a
he's got kind of
tapology
the
here.
leopard print hair going on.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah,
I might need to pull that up so we can give it to our followers here at the end. Yeah, we've got Yi Zha and Jung Young Lee. This should be another good fight. We've got the 145 finals here, and again, as I said, I think it's one of those fights where Yi Jia is coming in out of China, out of what's that promotion called? It's not great. I'd have to look up the name exactly, but I don't even know what this is. But anyway, it's not a great promotion out in China. The records get very padded. I mean, he's 26 years old and he's got 22 wins.
yeah,
He's 22-3. Like that's
yeah.
insane. Like
That's
how's he fought that
Overeem. That's
many times?
Overeem type number.
Right. Like and I mean some of them are tournaments and things like that, but that's just kind of the style. And I liked what I saw out of Yijia in this. I hadn't looked at the odds before I went and did the tape study. I lined it closer, to Lee as kind of a minus 150 favorite and Ja around a plus 150. So I think it's a little wide here. Again, Yijia is going to look to use his wrestling more than anything, and just kind of you know, he can win in all areas of the fight, but I don't think he's tremendous anywhere. The striking is below average. The wrestling's probably a little bit above average. But I'm also not super high on Jung Young Lee. I think he's got I think he's got good stuff. And we've seen him look good again in the road to the UFC as well. But I just don't know if he's going to be able to deal with the takedowns of Yija repeatedly. And I think if Yija is just able to kind of fight his fight on the mat, he could actually look a little bit more live here. So a big underdog, and this is actually where I'm going to go against, I think the popular opinion on MMA Twitter and everybody else this week. I'm picking Yija to win this fight by decision, and I think he's going to be able to get it done. Zhang Yongli is probably gonna make me regret that, but I think there's a lot of value in that. And you take a look at the odds, you can get him at plus 200 right now, right? Which by itself is not a bad line. Um, but his path is really either that submission or decision, right? And it's weird. They took some of these props down for whatever reason, but you can see that they'll open them back up, and actually they still got it on FanDuel. But you can get Ja by decision at plus 750, which I think is
Wow.
is a really really good look. If you want to throw that just in a single prop or a round robin or something like that. I think there's a lot of these fights here where if we don't see the knockout, I'm curious to see how they're able to match up. And I think we've gotten a bit of wide lines just with the hype on some of these prospects that we've seen on the other side. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at Yija to get this one done.
All right, all right. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Like you were saying, I mean, probably definitely a little record padding, but I do think that experience may be interesting. I mean, just having that many more fights at such a young age, going into the apex, probably kind of whirlwind for all these fighters being kind of in UFC's headquarters, right in front of Dana. So I think it'll be interesting to
Yep.
see that difference. But we'll move on to the last fight. This is kind of a change up, at least nationality wise, for everybody. But we got
Yeah.
Jaka Sirag. You can look at Ryan's screen. I
Sergi, I
feel I
think.
feel I feel
I think
bad
it's
even
Sergi.
attempting
I
some
think
of
it's
them. But he's from
Sergi.
Indonesia, and we got Anshul Jubli from India. So this is, I mean, lightweight bout, but I mean it'll be cool. There's not much representation, at least I've seen in the UFC from these
No.
areas, and I think it's kind
No,
of
absolutely not.
it's kind of a bummer the fight's not in South Korea. I think some of these type of fights would be really kind of interesting to see the crowd
Yeah,
for that. But
this is classic like Dana just saving money and being like
oh no,
I don't
yeah.
know
So
if they
okay, so I don't obviously I don't know any of these prelimers, but so that you'd say that.
no, I think so just because like there's no reason not to like they didn't do a good job of promoting the show. They didn't do a good job promoting these fights. Like I don't think like Volkanovski and Makhachev are fighting next week. Like
Yeah.
nobody fucking knows about it. You know what I mean? And
Did
it's
you
just like,
hear Islam? I'm
oh
pretty sure
yeah,
he
he's
made that comment, right?
right. He's pissed just because the promotion hasn't been very. It's like they're on DC and RC like
Yeah.
laughing it up, and I'm
I'll
like
say
like
I'll say it right now. I got Volk, but we'll get into
oh,
that more
big,
next week.
big. Well, I just put my first 30 on him, just
I
30
told
bucks.
you,
But
yeah. I mean, a good promotion. I watched the video that came out this
yeah,
morning. If
yeah,
I can,
yeah.
I'll try to throw it in right here, but it got me ready to lose or make a lot of money on Volkanovski. So
That's right. That's
um,
right. But why don't we get into this fight quickly, John?
yeah.
Because this is going to be a good one, and in the closest line of the championship road to the UFC fights, and for good reason. I think both of these guys are really good, and I think both probably have a UFC career ahead of them. Indonesia has actually never had a UFC fighter, is what I saw today. So Sergey is going to be trying to get that first UFC contract here for Indonesia. I don't know how many other Indians are in the UFC, but as you said, John, it's definitely not many. You go back and watch the tape. Jubilee is fighting absolute garbage cans on the Indian regional scene. It's kind of like what you'd expect of the Indian regional scene, not to shit on the Indian regional MMA scene. Good wrestlers, not a lot of MMA right now, and you did see a lot of wrestling, and that's going to be Jubilee's base. The interesting thing is in his road to the, if you just watch his road to the UFC fight, He only had one because the other guy missed weight. He stood up the whole time and really used his striking, and his striking looked a lot better than it had in any of his previous fights before that. It had been a 2-year gap. Obviously, I think he was pretty new to MMA and definitely seems to be getting better and progressing every time out. And I think we're going to continue to see that in this matchup, right? But I think he's going to have a real challenge here against Sergey, who is the more dangerous of the two. I think probably both on the ground and on the feet in terms of getting a finish. Again, here, God, I'm being boring this week. I just think Jubilee might have a better chance to just kind of lay on him and deal with the early pressure, right? Like a lot of these guys, I wonder just because they haven't had so much competition and so much difficulty, how they're going to do against a higher level of competition and how they're going to look in later rounds, right? Like most of these fights, all these guys are ending in round one, round two. And we've seen Sergey finished in both of his pro losses. So I think that's another interesting thing to point out as well. Has fought a better level of competition. But I think it's right. I think it's an evenly lined fight. I think one of them will probably look a bigger favorite, and we'll be telling ourselves we should have seen that value beforehand. But I like Jubilee here. I think he can implement his wrestling, and I think he's just going to be a bigger, heavier body on Sergey. And unless he exposes himself for a submission, I like Jubilee to just kind of be able to grind this out and win a decision. So at even odds, I took a little shot there earlier in the week. I was kind of curious to see where that line moves. It hasn't moved much at all. If we take a look at it, pretty much straight even pick them. So take your pick there, but I like Jubilee. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. We got onto the main card starting at 1 a.m.
Holy cow! I don't even know if I can stay up for this. We
I
got to
know
though.
we're
We
gonna
got
be
to.
relying on your
No,
prediction.
there's a good reason. Because we're gonna cash some tickets this week. I feel really good about a lot of these bets. So let's keep going through it.
All right. First fight you got pulled up there, but it's a welterweight bout between Japan's Yusaku Kinoshita versus Adam Fuggett.
Fuck it.
I don't know if
I don't
anyone
know.
I don't know if anyone
Fugit?
saw the I'll try I can try to splice it in too, but there's a great video today that went out there that was going through some of these fights, and yeah, I'll try to put it in. But what do you think, Ryan?
Oh, Sadiq Yusuf's video. That was great. I know what you're talking about, John. So yeah, this is gonna be a good fight. We're getting Kinoshita here. They call him the Japanese Conor McGregor after his last couple fights. That's what they've called him. His only loss on his record is because he was stomping on this dude like after he knocked him down, but he was grabbing the cage.
Mm.
Stomps are not illegal in Ryzen, but cage grabs are, so he's disqualified. So that's been his only loss on his record. And he's looked really good everywhere else. He is a striker first and foremost, and has a really nice southpaw movement and style. He gets in there hard and hits hard. Has some great combinations and really liked his counter striking going back watching the tape in that road to the UFC fight, that last one. A really good fight against Enrique Souza, who I think has some potential himself, but found with a nasty counter shot and put his lights out, which I really liked. So I'm excited. The one thing of note here that I was paying attention to, found him on Twitter, not really sure how, but tossed him over a follow and saw he had a bit of trouble getting over here this week. Didn't get to Vegas, it sounds like, until 2 days ago. So, recording this as of Thursday. Obviously, that's still about 5 days, and the times are a little bit weird, but just something to keep in mind. And it will be interesting, as we said earlier, right? Like, how are some of these guys who have to travel a long way going to be able to perform compared to some of the closer guys on this card? Not many of them, but will that be able to give them any sort of advantage? And against Fuji here, he's a pretty good fighter as well. Haven't seen him in the UFC much. Just saw him in LFA against Renfro, where he was a big underdog in that fight. Renfro was one of the top in LFA before he went over to Bellator, I believe, and he got a big knockout there as like a plus 350 dog, and then lost his last time out to Mike Morales, which, that's a tough fight. That's a tough fight in your first fight to take. The biggest thing I like here is violence. I like unders everywhere here,
That's a good
and
line. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I like Kinoshita inside the distance for sure. My big theory on this fight is I think Fuji's going to try and get it to the ground, right? And I think we're underrating both of their submission ability, right? Like, people think of Kinoshita as he is the Conor McGregor, right? Like, he's just going to stand and bang, and you watch his last fight and the counter striking, like, yeah, it kind of looks like that. You look early at his record, there's a lot of chokes, a lot of kind of front chokes and things like that, and in his amateur career as well. Both of these fighters have pretty crazy submission lines that I've jumped on. So I like this fight to end. I like this fight to end via submission. And if you have a strong lean one way or another, you can get great odds on both of these guys, right? So Future by submission at plus 1100. Kinoshita by submission at plus 900. So those are really interesting looks. The other way to go, fight doesn't start round 3. I like anything violence heavy is going to be something that I'm looking at and want a piece of this week. You know, I, Future's better than this. This line's wide for sure. Like, Future's better than this, and I think the hype is driving this one. So be
Mhm.
careful here. I wouldn't stack too many tickets. He could be the parlay buster this week, but man, he's getting a lot of hype. You see him kind of all over the promotion, the limited promotion that the UFC is doing this week, right? So that's what you always got to keep in mind with this stuff too, right? Like, they match make everybody for a reason, and sometimes, well, there's a script, as just like in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Yeah.
And it's just outcomes sometimes happen the way that they do. So anyway, I like Kanoshita. I like him to get it done inside the distance. But let's keep moving.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting with Fugit. I actually thought his name was Fugit,
Bug it.
Fugit, from the United States, one of the only U.S. guys on the card, like you said. I think that might open the door to some more upsets, or you never know. Ever since Zhang Wei Li first came over here, uh, sometimes you got to doubt the fighters stepping into a U.S. octagon for the first time. But
Right. That's right.
all right, let's move on quick. Next fight, we got featherweight bout between South Korea's Duho Choi versus Canada's Kyle Nelson.
Yeah, so the Korean Superboy, Do Ho Choi, versus the monster. Kyle, that guy, it does look like a monster. Kyle Nelson's a weird motherfucking guy. You go watch some interviews with him. He's like he's like
Huntsville,
the guy who
Ontario.
would like he's like the guy who would be at like Dave and Buster's, like trying to hit the punching thing as hard as possible and like get the high score and tell everybody about it. Like, he's just kind of like a full of himself guy. He's strong, he's tough, but as we've seen, not been great in the USC. Has just kind of been gross. He needs a win here. But he's coming back against a guy in Duho Choi who has been off for 3 years. So
Wow.
there's a whole story. The boys over at Fight Night Picks, the Allen brothers, do a great job over there. They were kind of given the breakdown on it. He's had a lot of different injuries, including some like vision problems. Like, he's got a thinning cornea or something, which, like, as a better, like, that kind of makes me like, I don't know if I want to trust a guy who can't see. But we've seen other guys in the UFC who can't see, like Bisping and do okay. But Choi's going to come in with a lot of hype here. This would have been big for him in South Korea. He's very loved there. I think the funniest thing I saw is you see the picture of him from when he first fought 8 years ago to when he was fighting today, and he looks younger in the fight coming up this weekend. So
Wow.
um, The big thing here, again, I like violence. I like Choi, but God, can you trust him after a layoff like this? Like his last win was 6 years ago. It's like Obama was still the president of
That's
the United
crazy.
States 6 years ago, right? Like, I mean,
I don't know if that lines up, but
that's the thing, right? Like what but the thing is he's just found himself in all these wars. So like if you're ever gonna go back and watch a fight like this fight against Cub Swanson, it's like one of the unanimous, I think it won best fight of the year that year and stuff. He's just been in, it's like you wouldn't expect him to be 31. With the amount of damage kind of on his tires. So it'll just be interesting to see the kind of durability that both of them have. But I'm expecting them to stand and kind of bang. Nelson maybe have a chance to use the wrestling. This fight's kind of been sticking right around where it's been at, with Duho just around about a minus 200 favorite. You can get a bit better lines though. Minus 174 on FanDuel. If it keeps moving, and we see Nelson kind of closes that favorite later to fight night, who knows? I might take a shot on Choi because I think the I don't know what he looks like after 3 years off, but the best version of him is significantly better than Kyle Nelson has ever been.
mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's like I'm trusting him to be 70% of himself in this matchup. And, at those odds, it's not something I have right now, but it's something I might take a look at. So,
All right. Yeah, that's pretty decent odds for a fighter, like you said. I think it'll be interesting, especially the guy who's been off for so long. I mean, missed all the COVID fights, missed a lot of those empty gym type fights. I mean, the Apex
right.
obviously has a crowd, but it's a little different than if it was in a packed South Korean arena or something like that. So I think that'll be interesting. And then with Nelson, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times that third loss in a row can, especially at his age, can be a bit of a death sentence in the UFC. So
For sure.
he's going to come out, and if your description was right, I'm sure he'll come out swinging.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a good fight. But let's move on to the next one. You got to pull it up. We have a heavyweight bout. First ranked fighters of the night. We have Poland's Marcin Tybura versus Bulgaria's Blagoy Ivanov.
You're not, you guys, we're not going to make it to the final fight because we're going to fall asleep during this one if you haven't already by like 2:30 or whatever time this is on. This is probably going to be pretty boring. Two big heavyweights who are like the least violent heavyweights in the UFC. It's pretty crazy. Like you would normally expect a heavyweight fight, right, to be juiced to unders. You'll get the over 2.5 rounds here, minus 250.
Jeez.
Like we are expecting a kickboxing match between two non-kickboxers, just some gross fighting back and forth because that's kind of the style that they've begun to employ later in their careers. And it works well in this heavyweight division against guys who you can't trade strike for strike with. Why they match them up together, I'm not totally sure. But it's going to be an interesting fight. I think Tybura has definitely had the higher level of competition in the shorter term. But Ivanov was over with Bellator and did a really nice job over there. Then he got stabbed when he was back in Bulgaria. He got like stabbed in the heart and was like out for 6 months. You can like go back and it's pretty fucking crazy. Look, you can see the hole in his chest if you look closely. I think we can zoom in there where he got stabbed. So he's a pretty fucking. The only thing here is right, like he's known for his chin. Has fought some big guys like Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa, who he actually beat and dropped Tai Tuivasa in that fight. But Derek Lewis, split decision loss, wasn't knocked out by him, just kind of has that iron chin and that iron willpower for a guy who gets stabbed and comes back and is still fighting. I'm not really surprised by that. The odds are pretty close here. Ivanov is kind of the favorite of MMA Twitter this week. He's really kind of closed down here lately. You'll see in the last kind of week has really closed down now to about a pick 'em fight. I like Tybura here. I like him to win by decision, but I'm not going to be touching this one. And I think it's just going to come down to the judges' scorecards and what they see as being more effective. So not really something I'm going to put my money on and leave it in the judges' hands. So
Well, if you're not touching it, I and probably the rest of the Cage Cash faithful will not be touching it either.
I like
Let's
that.
move on. Let's move on to the next fight. Light heavyweight bout. We got South Korea's Dawoon Jung versus the United States' Devin Clark. You got Jung as at least initially, a minus 245 favorite. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Jung here, honestly, guys. But this is going to be a good fight. And, Devin Clark is just motherfucking tough. We've seen a lot of tough fights from him. He's, again, like 32, but should be 40 with the amount of damage he's taken, especially in some of his last fights. But is really going to go in there and put up a big competition. And, I think it's going to be a good fight. The question is, can Devin Clark kind of control with his wrestling? And I don't think so. I think Jung is going to be able to keep it standing, going to be able to stop takedowns early, and then push a pace that's going to make Devin Clark uncomfortable. I think ultimately Jung's going to be able to get him out of there. Probably within the first 2 rounds. I could even see a second round finish or something for Jung here. I just like him. I've really liked what I've seen with him. The only downside and the only thing that scares me, you go back and you look at this D on the record. It's a decision split draw to Sam Alvey, who Smiling Sam Alvey, just fucking garbage UFC fighter. So does he show up all the time? And again, not being in South Korea, but he's in a primetime spot. And my thing is, I've seen a lot of interviews on Clark where he's sounding pumped, he's sounding excited about this fight. So to me, it kind of scared me away. I think this line's a little wide personally, but I'd take Jung. I like some of the plays here and some of the parlays, like just pairing up some of the Asian fighters. So I like actually Down Jung with Jung Young Park. I have you can kind of get a bunch of different combos going of some of these bigger fighters. Who I think have a pretty decent shot at winning. I wouldn't parlay them all together, but I think for smaller units, it's an interesting spot to take a look at. So I'm going to trust Jung here to get the job done and get it done inside the distance. But it's a fight I'm looking forward to, and we'll see how it goes.
All right. With that, we're on to the main event. One of the only well-known people on the card, but I'm excited for this one, especially seeing a lot of the recent content coming out from them. But we have the United States' number 7 ranked heavyweight Derek Lewis, Mr. My Balls Are Hot, versus the number 12 rank from Moldova, Sergey Spivak. And I mean, as a casual, I came in expecting Lewis to be the favorite here, and that's obviously not the case with Spivak at, from what you're looking at, minus 230. So walk me through what Vegas is seeing here and what you're seeing.
Yeah, so that's a good intro, John. You know, Derek Lewis, as we've seen maybe on some of the socials and stuff this week, is apparently thin now.
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if
if
that's,
that's
it's like one
true.
guy, you don't know if that's a
That's
if
such
that's a good
BS,
thing
right?
or a
Like
bad thing.
it's no, and so true. I just don't know how thin he's actually going to look come fight night. So we'll see there. The big problem lately is people aren't Vegas isn't sure of his chin anymore at this point, right? Like lost to Tai Tuivasa and looked okay in that fight, but took that elbow and was out pretty quickly. And then last time out to Sergey Pavlovich, kind of got ran over in a minute and 30 seconds. I think Sergey Pavlovich does that to a lot of guys. So I'm not going to blame Derek Lewis a lot there. The problem is he's fighting Sergey Spivak, who, you look over here, the polar bear, right? Fighting out of Moldova, polar bear
Two
fight
great
team.
nicknames. Two great
You
nicknames.
know, he's a polar bear, and I wouldn't be meeting him out in the wild. He's got it on his fucking chest. I wouldn't be meeting him out in the wild. No way. Sergey Spivak is dangerous everywhere. And in this division, I think he has that kind of X factor of he has a really nice ground game and he'll use it and just throw people around. Like when he fought when he fought. The only loss he has is Aspinall, who he kind of got ran over by, but was able to deal with Olynyk on the ground, who's, as we know, a very dangerous grappler, and was able to get a finish on him, or actually get a decision on him. Jared Vandera, who sucks, got the KO, but then KO'd Greg Hardy, really chucked Greg Hardy around, which is pretty crazy to see, just like former all pro, defensive end. And this guy can just kind of pick him up and toss him around at will. That's what Spivak is able to do. So I think whether we're getting skinny Black Beast or fat Black Beast, I like Spivak here. I do. Lewis is live for a KO as always, but Spivak definitely has more paths to win. And I think, his path of least resistance is to get this fight to the ground and look for a submission. So that's where my money went. I locked something in earlier today at Bet Rivers at plus 360, just $10. I think that's an interesting way that this fight could end, though, and I think that's where he'd really have a decided advantage, right? Because no matter what, Derek Lewis does have that undeniable power, the most knockouts in heavyweight history, right? Most knockouts in UFC history. So you're not going to want to stand with him for too long if you're smart. So if I'm Sergey Spivak, if I am the motherfucking polar bear, I'm getting this fight to the ground, looking to get, Lewis's chunky arms up, get an arm triangle, and get him out of there pretty early. But we can take a look at the odds, and, Spivak is that favorite, closing fast. So if you're going to get the money there, I might do it. I might do it now. And if you want to root for a Black Beast KO, I'm not gonna hate you there. I think that's always a fun one. And I just hope that either Derek Lewis can put on a good performance, or can find a fight kind of coming up from this where he's able to rebound. Because definitely do like him as a fighter and want to see him succeed. So, but that's the fight game, and I've got Spivak in this one.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm just looking at it quick, but I see, like you said, there are some great openings if you do like Lewis. I mean, plus 500 KO. I mean, he might see the writing on the wall for some of it and kind of his disadvantages, and might come out. He might come out swinging. So I think it'll be
Mm-hmm.
interesting. You're probably on the right track here with Spivak, but I'm just hoping, especially if I'm up this late at night, that it is a exciting fight.
Right. That's the
A
biggest thing. If
grapple
you guys are
fest.
still up, if you guys are back from the bar and still up watching this one, I would be putting some money on violence for sure, more than anything. And I think that's what you're going to get in this fight. Some interesting looks. I mean, like, you're going to have to ask for it early, right? Like minus 125 for under 1.5. But I think there's a good shot something like that cashes, right? Because I think both of them are very live on the feet. And again, if Spivak gets it to the ground, I think Lewis is probably getting tapped out pretty quickly. So that's really the way I'm looking. Any more thoughts, John, before we kind of wrap things up and take a look one more time through, our best bets and close things out?
I do not. So, like Ryan said, that was our breakdown of UFC Vegas 68. And now we're going to do just a quick segment. Ryan's going to run you through each of his bets in case you missed any of them. He threw a lot at you. But let's let Ryan go quick through each of his favorite bets of the night.
Yeah, thanks, John. So this is a good way, and we'll comment this down below, but we'll always have this at the end of videos for you guys to take a look at, screenshot, send around and find some ways to cash. So did this right before the video came out and was just looking for some best spots to kind of help us cash together. So we'll go fight by fight. Tyra and Aguilar, you can get Tyra inside the distance, around minus 175, as we said. I like Tyra by KO as that value bet at plus 600. Tululin versus Young Park. I like the Young Park money line. I think that's the safest play. If I'm going to do it, it's as a value bet, probably inside the distance at plus 200. John Young Kim and Manny Baum. As I said, I'm passing on this one. I think DraftKings had an interesting prop up. Either fighter to win by split or majority decision plus 500. If I'm betting on it, that would probably be the look I'm doing. As I said earlier, maybe the value bet, a late Kim KO. You can get that for really high odds. Shen Tung Park and Sung Gyuk Choi. I'm taking the Choi money line, plus 170 on Caesars, and my value bet is Choi by decision. You can get it plus 320 on FanDuel right now. We've got Lee Jung Young and Yi Jia. I've got Yi Jia as the money line dog here at plus 205 on DraftKings right now. And if I'm going to do a value bet, I'm taking Jia by decision at plus 600. I think if he wins this fight, that's probably his path. And, just implementing the wrestling and getting this job done there. We got Nakamura and Kazama. I like Nakamura inside the distance, minus 145 on Bet Online. You could also take Kazama by submission, that big BJJ credentialed guy, plus 750 on DraftKings. Jubilee and Sarah Gee. I like Jubilee's money line, minus 115 on DraftKings, or as a value bet, Jubilee by decision, plus 244. Ivanov and Tybura. I like that Tybura money line. Value bet Tybura by submission. I think actually if Tybura can get this fight to the ground, he will have a decided advantage there. And you never know at those kinds of odds. I think it's worth a shot. We've got Adam Fugit versus Yusaka Kinoshita. I like Kinoshita inside the distance. You can still get him pretty close to plus money. Value bet, as we talked about earlier, either fighter by submission. You can get either one of them right around plus 1,000, which I think is a really interesting look. I've got a Kinoshita bet there as well. We've got Choi Do-ho and Kyle Nelson. Who knows what's going to happen in this fight? I like violence, though. I'm going to take Do-ho inside the distance and under 1.5 rounds as my value bet of the night. And then finally, Da Ujung, Devin Clark. I'm taking Da Ujung money line, value bet by decision. And then Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivak. I like Sergey Spivak here inside the distance. And my value bet is going to be Sergey Spivak by decision, plus 360 at Bet Rivers. So thanks for taking a look, guys. Thanks for going through this card with us. Really hope you guys continue to tune in, throw a like on the video, subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, let us know your thoughts down below. And we'll see you again soon.